You think you've outrun your past until it looks back at you, with the same eyes it wore the day you almost died. I saw him by the well. At first, just a figure hunched in the sun, lifting a bucket with slow, careful hands. His robe was dusty, his beard like wind-blown ash, his back bent by years. A dozen steps away, I didn't flinch. Just another old man. But then he turned, and everything inside me, all the walls I'd built, the breath I'd learned to control, crumbled in one heartbeat. It was the eyes, that glassy, black iron stare, the same one I'd seen across the sand, over the rim of a blood-soaked helmet, when the horn blew and there was only survival. We didn't speak. We just stood there, the world slowing to a crawl. A breeze stirred his robe, lifted a strand of hair from my brow. A crow cawed once, and then even that sound died. His hand lowered from the bucket, and that's when I saw it. A mark. Faded. Warped by time and skin, but still legible. The two crossing blades. The ink brand given to the killers who earned favor. The Gladiator's sigil. My mouth went dry. I felt the weight of the dirt road under my boots shift, like the ground was no longer earth, but sand again. Hot. Loose. Alive. My hand twitched toward the satchel on my hip, instinct without reason. I wasn't armed. I wasn't that man anymore. And still, my body begged to fight. He didn't move, just stared. The water creaked behind him, sloshing quietly in the bucket. A donkey brayed in the distance. Somewhere, a child laughed. Life went on, unaware that something ancient and dark had just slipped back into the world. And then, slowly, he nodded. Just once. Not a greeting. Not recognition. A warning. Or maybe a promise. I turned away. I don't remember walking back to the house. I don't remember closing the door. All I remember is leaning against the wall, knees shaking, heart pounding like it was trying to crack through my ribs and flee. Because I'd seen ghosts before. But that wasn't a ghost. That was flesh. That was memory made solid. That was a name I had forgotten, standing at the edge of my new life, reminding me that I didn't bury him deep enough. The next morning, I tried to convince myself it hadn't happened, that the heat had warped my mind, that my eyes had seen what they feared, not what was there. But the well was real. The man was real. And when I walked past that spot again, there were 2 fresh boot prints in the dirt. Heavy. Deep. One turned outward, just like his leg used to drag after that fight in the northern pit. No one in the village would have noticed. No one cared about how men stood, how they limped, or where their weight fell when they walked. But I did. Because once, I studied those details like scripture. Because one misread move in the arena meant a blade under your ribs and silence forever. At home, my wife was shelling beans. She smiled. She didn't ask why I looked pale or why I hadn't slept. My son was chasing a chicken with a stick. The dog barked. Life was happening. But I couldn't feel any of it. I just kept watching the hills through the window, like the sun had teeth now, like it might spit out another face from the dust. I went to the stable, found the rusted short sword I told myself I'd never touch again. It still fit in my hand too well. I wrapped it in cloth, hid it under the loose floorboard in the corner of the shed. I told myself I was being cautious, that it was nothing. But I also sharpened it that night, in the dark, with the door closed. I told no one. The next time I saw him, he was sitting at the edge of the square, peeling a pear with a knife. Just like that, like he belonged here. His robes were cleaner, and he had a new walking stick. He wasn't looking at me, but he was facing me. And that knife, slow and careful, traced the curve of the fruit like he was cutting muscle from bone. Not a soul noticed. He looked like anyone else, but I could see it in the angle of his wrist. He still remembered how to kill. I waited for him to look up. He never did. Not once. But I still walked away feeling like I'd been seen, like my face had been peeled apart and pinned to the wall inside his mind. Later, at the market, a boy tried to sell me a carved horse. I flinched when he stepped close. That was new. I'd never flinched in years. I dropped the coins. My hand shook. I walked home fast, through the alley near the shrine. I turned the corner, and there he was again. Standing with a priest, laughing, like he'd lived here forever, like he had roots in the ground. But when the priest turned to bless a traveler, the old man didn't move. His eyes were on me, not smiling, just watching. The knife was gone, but I saw the print of it in his belt. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the chair by the window, watching the street. Every shadow felt like it had a breath. Every rustle sounded like a whisper I almost understood. My wife stirred once. I told her I couldn't sleep. She kissed my shoulder and drifted back. I wanted to tell her. But how do you explain to someone that your life isn't yours anymore? That it's just an echo of a time when you killed for a crowd? I closed the shutters just before dawn. Not because I was tired, but because I couldn't take being seen anymore. Because that man, whoever he was now, had once stood in blood beside me. And men like us didn't just share fights. We shared sins. And sins don't forgive. They wait. 3 days passed. He didn't show up again. No glimpse at the market, no face at the well. I told myself it was over. Maybe he was a traveler passing through. Maybe the past had played a trick on me. But I kept checking the window every morning, pretending to adjust the shutters. I kept walking with one hand near my belt. The old habits returned like smoke. Quiet. Invisible. Suffocating. Then the letter came. No name. Just folded parchment, left on our doorstep, sealed with mud. My wife thought it was a tax notice. I knew it wasn't. Inside, one line, written in the old tongue we gladiators used for quick signals, crude and sharp like it was carved into flesh. It said, "He knows." That was all. I didn't eat that night. I watched my son build a fort out of kindling and pretend to guard it from wolves. He held a stick like it was a sword. I almost corrected his grip. Almost. But I stayed silent. I wasn't his teacher. Not that kind. Not anymore. That night, I returned to the shed. The sword felt colder now. I held it under the lantern, studied the nicks along the edge. Each one a memory I'd buried. Faces I forgot on purpose. Screams I blocked out. I wasn't afraid of dying. Not really. I was afraid of who I might become again to survive. The next morning, he was back, sitting near the grain sacks, feeding pigeons like some gentle uncle. But when he looked up, just for a second, I saw it. Not his eyes, his arm. The sleeve slipped, and there it was. The ink. Faded. Twisted with age. But still clear. The mark. Ours. A serpent eating its tail. Every fighter in our unit had it. Not for pride. Not for glory. It was a reminder that we were tools, that the arena swallowed everything and gave nothing back. He saw me staring, didn't flinch, just pulled the sleeve down slowly and smiled. That kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. The kind that says, "Yes, I remember. All of it." I left without speaking. I should have said something, confronted him, asked who he was now, why he came. But I couldn't. I wasn't ready to hear whatever name he used now, because whatever answer he gave, I knew it would change nothing. The blood was still between us, like ink that never fades. That night, I drank alone, just one glass. but the taste of it was enough to bring back the heat of the sand, the roar of the crowds, the feel of a man's heartbeat under your blade. I hated it. I hated how easy it came back, like it had waited for me. My wife touched my shoulder as I stood by the window, asked me if I was all right. I said yes. She didn't believe me, but she let it go. Sometimes love is knowing when not to ask. At dawn, I went to the well. I stood where he had stood. I waited, but he didn't come. Only silence, only dust. But the feeling in my gut told me he wasn't far. He was circling, like a hawk waiting for the rabbit to move. And I knew then, this wasn't about reunion. This was a message. He'd seen what I'd built, a quiet life, a family, peace. And he came to remind me, the arena never lets anyone leave clean. It doesn't send ghosts, it sends messengers. And this one was patient. The days bled into each other. I went through the motions, chopping wood, mending fences, trading grain. But nothing felt real. Every sound was sharper. Every shadow stretched too long. I could feel him, not see him, but feel, the way an animal senses a storm before it comes. My wife said I looked tired. I said the harvest was late. She didn't argue. But her eyes stayed on me longer than usual, as if trying to recognize the man she married. Then came the second message. This time it wasn't written. It was placed. On the bench where I sat every morning with my coffee, a small object wrapped in leather. I opened it carefully, fingers tense, breath shallow. Inside, a tooth. Human. Blackened with age. I knew whose it was. A man I had killed during my 3rd year in the arena. His jaw had shattered when I struck. That tooth had stayed in the sand. I'd stepped on it once, mid-fight. Now it was here, on my bench, like a trophy, like a curse. I buried it behind the barn. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay still, listening to the wind brush the shutters, the distant bark of a dog, the creak of old wood. At some point, I got up and checked every door. Then I checked again. I found myself standing in the middle of the kitchen, sword in hand, staring at the shadows. My son walked in, rubbing his eyes. He asked if everything was okay. I lied again. In the morning, the old man was at the well. Again. He didn't move when I approached, didn't speak, just dipped the bucket and drank slowly. Then he said, "You always looked away after the kill, even back then. That's how I knew you'd break one day." His voice was soft. No hate in it, just observation. I said nothing. He continued, "You changed your name, got a wife, a boy, a dog. You think you left it all behind. But blood stains deeper than ink. And some of us remember." I asked him what he wanted. He turned, looked at me with those same pale eyes that used to scan the crowd for weakness. "I want to remind you who you are, before someone else does." Then he walked away. No threats, no violence, just calm certainty, like a priest delivering last rites. That evening, I packed a small satchel, just in case. My wife asked if we were going somewhere. I told her no. But I made sure my sword was near the door. I cleaned it for the first time in years. Oiled the blade, wrapped the hilt. It felt too familiar in my hand, like muscle memory was waiting. At midnight, I stepped outside. The wind had shifted, warmer, heavier. I could smell the desert again, though it had been miles away for years. I stood under the stars, thinking about who I used to be, the cheers, the fear, the final moments when steel touched flesh and everything slowed down. And then I saw him, across the field, a silhouette against the moonlight, not hiding, just standing there, watching. This wasn't a threat anymore. It was an invitation, a reminder that peace isn't given, it's borrowed. And sometimes, it comes with interest. I didn't sleep. I sat by the fire, blade across my lap, eyes fixed on the door. My wife and son slept in the next room. I could hear them breathing, unaware of the war tightening outside the walls. The air had changed. There was a silence too full, like the world was holding its breath. And I knew, without a doubt, that he would come tonight. But he didn't knock. The door creaked open like it had remembered him. No footsteps, just presence. I stood before he stepped into the light. He wore no armor, no weapon, just the same tattered coat and the eyes of a man who never left the pit. We stared at each other for a long moment. The fire cracked behind me. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked once, then stopped. "You trained me," he said. "Do you remember?" I did. He was the quiet one, fast but hesitant. I taught him to kill without delay. It was a mistake. He learned too well. "I don't want this," I said. He smiled. "Then why are you holding the sword?" I looked down. My hands were trembling, not from fear, but from something worse. Readiness, the kind of readiness I thought I had buried. "You have a family now," he said. "You earned that, but some debts don't forgive. You walked out of the sand. I was left in it. You don't get to be clean." I tightened my grip. He took a step forward. "You don't even remember his name, do you?" he whispered. "The man whose tooth I gave back." And he was right. I didn't. The faces had blurred into each other. I remembered how they fell, not who they were. That shame hit harder than any blade. He didn't lunge. He didn't yell. He just moved. Quick. Sharp. No hesitation. We clashed like we had 100 times in practice. But now there were no rules, just instinct and muscle. The firelight danced off our shadows, making monsters of us. I could hear my own breath, his footsteps on the floor, the old rhythm of survival pounding in my chest. He was faster. I was smarter. He cut my shoulder. I slammed his wrist into the wall. The sword clattered across the floor. We grabbed each other like beasts, like brothers lost in hate. I could feel the years of sand and screams between us, heavy and hot and bitter. Then I saw his eyes, for real. And behind the rage was something else. Grief. He didn't come to kill me. He came because he didn't know how to live without the blood. I let go. He staggered back. I knelt, not in defeat, but in surrender. The kind that says, I won't fight this war anymore, even if it costs me everything. He stood over me, chest heaving, sword in his hand. I waited, and then he dropped it. The clatter echoed like thunder. He turned and left without a word, just a shadow fading into the cold morning air. I sat there, bleeding, surrounded by the quiet. My son peeked around the doorframe, his eyes wide. I didn't tell him what happened. I just reached for him, held him tight. And I realized, the arena never leaves. Not really. But sometimes, if you're lucky, you get to walk away twice.